All right, so as you know, I've been doing these reviews of all of the Daily Wire's feature films, original feature film content that they've been posting on their website. And I have not done a good old fashioned installment of my Person at Daily Wire Does Not Understand Thing series. And in this case, it's Matt Walsh not understanding the conviction of Derek Chauvin. So, the backstory here, there has been a recent emergence of, or recent refocusing, I should say, of attention on the conviction of Derek Chauvin after it was revealed that George Floyd most likely died not from the neck compression, but from a fentanyl overdose. Okay, so people are saying that that should be sufficient to overturn the conviction of Derek Chauvin for second-degree murder. So it's a little more. Also, this is also back in the news because Derek Chauvin was shivved in prison recently, and I'm sorry, but no matter what you think of the man, it is inappropriate to be reveling in his being shivved in that manner. We do not practice cruel and unusual punishment. Derek Chauvin was already being punished based on the predetermined guidelines for the crime of which he was committed and the crime for which he's been committed, and it is inappropriate to applaud any person being further tortured above and beyond what their sentence calls for. And I realize that it's viscerally satisfying. I get that, and that's why I'm telling you that you should make the mature decision not to revel in that. The way that people are treated in prison in such a way when they get shivved and things like that, that is sad, that is awful, and that is above and beyond, or beyond the pale, I should say. Anyway, that said, before you grab a rope, rest assured that I do agree that Derek Chauvin was responsible for the death of George Floyd. And here's the thing. The fact that George Floyd died of, or I should say the emergent evidence, as we're now considering these things, the emergent evidence that George Floyd died of a fentanyl overdose rather than the neck compression from Derek Chauvin's knee, should indicate, or might indicate, a changing of how we are. It might indicate a change of how we interpret and how we apply the law in this situation, but it would not exonerate Derek Chauvin from responsibility. Now, before I get into all of that, I want to say I was watching this episode. See, I put this on just while I was working because I have I have the Daily Wire Plus for a month because I got it to review Lady Ballers. And so I just happened to put on episode 1269 of the Matt Walsh Show from November 29th, 2023. And what was interesting, I always emphasize I am neither someone that's in blind allegiance with people like Matt Walsh, nor am I somebody that's that is endlessly and automatically opposed to in opposition to the views of Matt Walsh, kind of like people like the Majority Report with Sam Sater, where whatever Matt Walsh says or someone like Matt Walsh says, they just have to find a reason to be against it. They can't ever concede any degree of common ground with their enemy, their opposition. These are just people with ideas that I may or may not agree with. Now, as I was watching this episode, the things he was getting into were we were actually, Matt and I were actually largely getting along in this episode as I was watching this episode, because he started out with a comment on how the recent DEI initiative to there's been a recent DEI initiative to lower the entrance exam standards for people applying to work as air traffic controllers, because they want to try to diversify the racial makeup of people entering the air traffic control profession. And he has, I agree, he has a point that is an unbelievably stupid idea in a profession like air traffic control, where you can have where many lives are on the line every single day, and the competency of air traffic controllers is crucial for diverting these disasters. And he gave a number of examples of how improperly trained or ineffective air traffic controllers either resulted in or almost resulted in the deaths of people. It's and I would further I would further add that if you are concerned about the lack of diversity in the field of air traffic control, what you need to do is not lower the entrance exams. You need to focus on encouraging young people of diverse backgrounds to get into that field. But as far as who is applying and who's getting the job, I'm sorry, but we can't afford to have anyone other than the absolute best people doing that job. Then, irrespective of their race, I should add. Then he talked about the recent thing. There was a young boy who was wearing a Native American headdress, had his face painted black and red at a recent pro football game, and was wearing a Native American headdress. And some asshat of a journalist saw this from one side, seeing only the black side, accused this little boy, who I believe is about 6 or 7 years old, of one, culturally appropriating Native American regalia, and then also wearing blackface, failing to see the other side of the image. And it has now of course been revealed that the little boy in question was not wearing blackface. He was wearing the colors appropriate for the team that he was there to root for, and far from culturally appropriating Native American heritage, or Native American artifacts, he himself is in fact Native American. Matt Walsh's position was that this journalist should face just hell's worst possible defamation lawsuit, and I agree. And I'm quite frankly, my color commentary on that is that if you are the kind of callous, shitheel, worthless, scum-sucking, pathetic journalist that would dare to drag a 7-year-old little boy through the horrific monstrosity that is cancel culture, well, quite frankly, sir, you better be real fucking glad I don't believe in vigilanteism. But anyway, so as you can see, we are agreeing, wholeheartedly throughout this thing, like all the major points. Yeah, good. We're going 10 out of 10. And then he gets to this. He gets to the point somebody raised. He was responding to a viewer's comment who was saying that they believe that Derek Chauvin still bore responsibility for what happened with George Floyd. And Matt Walsh gives an explanation for why. Now, here's what we have to understand as far as people are talking about whether or not the conviction of Derek Chauvin should or should not be overturned. There is an issue here with double jeopardy, where Derek Chauvin cannot be tried for the same crime twice. At best, I'm not a legal professional, I just happen to know this piece of information. At best, what you could do is overturn the conviction for second-degree murder and retry him for criminal negligence, for manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter. Now, that much I would at least be in favor. If we have to go down any road, that's the road I would be in favor of going down. I do not believe in releasing Derek Chauvin from prison. And here's the thing, though. Matt Walsh's argument to this person was that it was not that the onus of responsibility in the situation was on George Floyd because, as Matt Walsh put it, George Floyd was a criminal that was overdosing on drugs. And at that point, it was no longer society's job to protect him from the consequences of protect George Floyd from the consequences of his actions. Well, there's a few problems there as we get into the legalities of this. First of all, George Floyd was not guilty of the crime of which he was accused. He can never be guilty of the crime of which he was accused because he can never stand trial for the crime of which he is accused. He may have been, in fact, ultimately guilty. We don't know that. But as far as the law, we could make a case towards that, but as far as the law is concerned, he is innocent because he is innocent until proven guilty, and that matters. It has to matter because we do not, in this country, we do not decide that people are or are not worthwhile people deserving of the rights and protections of this country based on whether or not they are, based on some kind of moral judgment of their character. The law applies to everybody equally. So no, that really does matter. And that gets into my next point, which is that the issue at hand would be whether the question would now become, if the neck compression was not the issue that resulted in George Floyd's death, then the next matter to arise would be, did Derek Chauvin, a public servant who is responsible for the well-being of everyone in the situation, adequately address the fact that George Floyd was experiencing an overdose of fentanyl? Well, George Floyd was clearly communicating to Derek Chauvin that he could not breathe. He communicated that before he laid down on the ground. He requested to lie down on the ground, but he was clearly communicating that he could not breathe. And at that point, Derek Chauvin, as a police officer, a public servant in that capacity, was required to do his due diligence to ensure that George Floyd was not dying. And Matt Walsh doesn't seem to care about that because George Floyd, as far as he's concerned, George Floyd is some sort of disreputable lowlife, and therefore Matt Walsh can't seem to conceive of George Floyd having equal protection under the law, under the bar of law. Also, Matt Walsh is wholly and completely inaccurate to say that George Floyd was resisting arrest. He did not pose a violent threat to anybody. He was the one who requested to lay down on the ground. Now, anyway, so that is wholly and completely incorrect. But here's the thing. Imagine it this way. If a person walked up to a police officer and said, apropos of no criminal accusation, a person walked up to a police officer and said, "I can't breathe," it would be that police officer's responsibility within the bounds of the job that they, or the responsibilities of the job that they undertook. It would be that police officer's responsibility to follow a certain course of action to make sure that that person got help. So all that this would do, if Derek Chauvin's conviction for second-degree murder were overturned, all it would do is reopen a case. All it would do is then open a case for involuntary manslaughter. Now, here's the thing. Derek Chauvin knew that George Floyd could not breathe. George Floyd's inability to breathe was clearly communicated to Derek Chauvin over and over and over again. And Derek Chauvin took no action whatsoever to get George Floyd any kind of medical attention or try to resolve the issue of him not being able to breathe. So at that point, I would then pose to you, what Derek Chauvin is convicted of is second-degree murder. First-degree murder means that two people entered into an altercation, and one of those people two or more people entered into an altercation, and one or more of those people entered the altercation with the intention of killing the other one. That's first-degree murder. Second-degree murder is that two people entered into an altercation, and during the course of that altercation, one of the two people decided to murder the other one. Third-degree murder is normally just categorized as manslaughter. And in manslaughter cases, or involuntary manslaughter cases, we're talking about situations where neither person went into a situation wanting to kill the other one, and neither person had the intention of killing the other one, but one or more of the parties in the situation, one or more people entered into a conflict where while they did not have the intention of killing the party who died, the party died as a result of their actions or a result of their negligence. So that would then be what we have to evaluate Derek Chauvin for, would just be involuntary manslaughter. Okay, well, that word involuntary is a big problem, because you have to remember, this was not communicated to him one time in a split-second incident. This was communicated to him over and over again as he knelt down with his knee on George Floyd's neck and did nothing. And at that point, I kind of have to come back to agreeing with the second-degree manslaughter conviction, because Derek Chauvin not only knew that George Floyd was unable to breathe and failed to take action to rectify that situation. Not only did he know that for an extended period of time, but he let that issue continue for such a long period of time that after a while, with having that knowledge, he has the knowledge that George Floyd is not able to breathe, and he's not doing anything to alter that, to rectify that situation. After a while, that would begin to show intent. He now has the information that George Floyd is facing a mortal problem. He can't breathe. He continues to have that knowledge for minutes and minutes and minutes on end. And after that point, I just have to agree that Derek Chauvin, in that moment, decided that he was going to let George Floyd die, asphyxiate to death. Whether it was because of his knee or because of the fentanyl overdose, George Floyd was dying. And Derek Chauvin actively chose to kill George Floyd, or he actively chose to block George Floyd from getting the medical care that he required, both of which would be examples of second-degree murder. So no, but the underlying, what really galls me about this, though, is the underlying mindset that Matt Walsh clearly has here. The mindset that's reflected by him and Candace Owens and Michael Knowles and so many of these people. It's not reflected by Brett Cooper, but I think that's because she's young and idealistic. It's not reflected by Jordan Peterson, but I think that's because he's more of just a philosophical, cultural commentator rather than a news anchor and that sort of thing. I don't know what his opinion is on it. But it is worrisome that Walsh, Knowles, Owens, they seem to have this mindset that says that they see a division of people in this country, a division of people into worthwhile people who deserve the protections of the law, and lowlifes and undesirables who don't deserve the protection of the law. That is not how this country works. And it's a big problem when the major thought leaders of this country don't understand the basic foundational principles that this country was built upon, especially when those thought leaders claim to be the very ones who are fighting to conserve the foundational principles that this country was built upon.